Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being with us today as we discuss things that are important to the village. I'm Susan Kirk. I'm a member of the Governmental Affairs Committee. Other committee members that are here today, Margaret Carroll, Scott Black, Greg Reedy, Steve Packwood, and Joe Betancourt and Mike Paulson were not able to be here, but they are committee members. I'd also like to acknowledge and welcome in the room, we have John Orr, a board member, and we have, where'd he go? There he is, Mike Braddock, and former board member Pat White. Thank you guys for being here. The Government Affairs Committee, who are we and what we do? We're a committee of 7. Our primary goal is we act as a liaison and advocate for the village. We educate elected officials and commissions as well as villagers. We also try to be a leader in community activism to get out the vote. And our last effective vote on presidential year, we had 83% voter turnout, so good voting villagers. We serve as liaisons to organizations, engaging with officials, bringing Tellico Village issues to them for the consideration. Welcome, in walked Mayor Buddy Bradshaw. Come on forward if you'd like, Buddy, join us up here. If you're comfortable back there, that's fine, but thank you so much for coming. Okay, welcome, thank you. He's all alone up here. So we'll begin with just a little brief introduction of Lowell Russell, and we're going to give him a few minutes to talk about what happened in Nashville this year. Not too long, because everybody has questions about what happened in Nashville. They're their own questions, as well as other things that are coming up. So, who is Lowell? What do you know about him? You probably recognize his face, but we can't assume because so many people in the village are new. So, Representative Lowell Russell was first elected in 2018 as the 21st District State Representative. He grew up in Vonore, graduated Vonore High School. He has a degree in criminal justice. Before entering into politics, he spent 14 years as a state trooper until he and his car were run over by a tractor trailer. He serves as chairman of the Civil Justice Subcommittee while also serving on the Criminal Justice Committees, Transportation Committees, and Ethics Committee. He is a Baptist and a member of First Baptist of Madisonville. That's Lowell. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to him to give us a little bit of a briefing on Tennessee. I'm going to be your timekeeper, let you know when we're going to start opening up for questions for you.
Perfect. Thank you, Susan. I appreciate you and everybody that put this together. It's so wonderful to be with each and every one of you. It seems like that I don't get into the villages nearly as much as I should, especially when we're in Nashville for 4 months out of the year. But I'll have to tell you, I never feel far from you because a lot of y'all take time to email and call me, and that means a lot to me because good representation comes from good communication. And if you don't care, make sure we keep that up because I got to know what you're thinking to be able to vote in Nashville. That's how things gets done. So it's a wonderful opportunity to represent you. Appreciate it. I can report to you tonight that Tennessee is thriving. We are, if you compare us to the other states, we were one of the lowest tax states in the nation, the lowest debt per capita. We have a cost of living that's well below the national average, and we balance a $52.8 billion budget this year. And we do all that by maintaining a AAA bond rating. And of course, the number one priority for a state legislator is present a balanced budget, and we do that with making sure that we protect your tax dollars. That's the number one priority. As cheap as I am, I don't want to spend no more than I have to. But that's how well we're doing across with the other states. Now, if you compare us with Washington, D.C., we're doing exceptionally well. Just 2 years in this current administration, we had seen 40-year high inflation, record high gas prices. The national debt is out of control. They don't have a clue what a balanced budget is. I think it's been over 30 years since they balanced the national budget, and crime is running rampant across our country. That's what we're facing today. This year in Tennessee, we passed legislation that backs our law enforcement. We passed one piece of legislation called Back the Blue, and it increases the penalties that for people that assault law enforcement officers to a Class C felony. We passed legislation to protect Tennessee land from foreign ownership of hostile countries. We have an issue here in Hopkins Valley Road I'm sure that Mayor Bradshaw's probably filled you in on that a little bit, and most of y'all already know about it anyways, where the Walton Group owns, I believe it's 400 acres, and we started with a piece of legislation that sort of mirrored Arkansas, but unfortunately during the committee process, it sort of got watered down just a little bit with an amendment, and we'll fight that again next year, I guess. But we passed legislation giving grandparents more rights. Ever since I started running for office in the fall of 2017, all I heard is we want to give grandparents more rights, and that was made a lot of common sense to me. And so for the past 6 years, we couldn't figure out how we're going to do it. And finally, this past year, we got a little step forward about giving grandparents more rights for their grandchildren, and hopefully it's a step in the right direction. We passed legislation to make sure you get hospital visits, so hospitals cannot turn you away if you've got a loved one in the hospital and they use the pandemic or whatever excuse they have to not allow visitors. We passed legislation to make sure that family members or I think it's an attorney gets to be able to come in and see their family. We passed legislation to require law enforcement officers to report illegal aliens to the federal government. We passed legislation for the National Guard to send a brigade-sized force to the Texas border. But the two issues right now, when it was surveyed, was the illegal immigration and the economy, according to national polls, and hopefully that'll help out just a little bit. We passed legislation to enhance penalties for illegal immigrants doing crimes in Tennessee. We passed legislation that will give the death penalty to child rapists. And this next one, I got several emails towards the end of the session talking about squatters and wanting us to do something with the squatters that are happening in Tennessee. And I didn't think we'd be able to run it this year, so I would reply back and say we'll put it in the 2025 file, because there's only a certain time that you can go in every year and file new legislation. And the cutoff date's around February the 1st, give or take a few days. And unless there is a bill out there that is the exact code you need that can be amended, you can amend it and pass something. And that's what we found with Representative Rudd's bill. So we amended it and addressed where squatters can be removed within 72 hours by the sheriff. And we passed a bill to hopefully get more affordable housing in Tennessee. Two particular bills that I passed this year was a school bullying bill. We always hear about sometimes acts of violence, and everybody would always blame the bullying, but nobody would ever do anything about it. But so I wrote a bill that would define bullying, and then if a law enforcement officer knows of a child getting bullied in school, they're required to make a report and tell the parents how to get a copy of that report. So hopefully it'll help out with some of these issues. Steve Teague, the road superintendent in Monroe County, we had a issue where a road collapsed, and he mentioned about the state charging local governments for a tile permit for emergency situations. I think it was either $400 or $600. I'm pretty sure it's $400. And so he suggested that county shouldn't have to pay that $400, and I drafted that bill and ran it this past year, and thank goodness it passed. And I didn't know it was going to until like the very last week or two before session. So that's where we're at. Ever since I started running for office in 2017, I always focused on public safety, a strong economy, and small government, and I will remain focused on those key issues. And I'm pretty certain we can do those things while protecting our constitutional rights as we increase individual liberty and providing a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So I stand ready for questions.
You are quick. Wonderful. So we're going to follow our typical format. If you have a question, please come up to the microphone here. We need to be able to hear you. We need to pick you up on the recording. We are live, and this is being recorded for future viewing. So we need to be able to hear you, so please use the microphone. One of the guys will make sure the green light is lit, please. And we welcome any kind of discussion, question. There's really nothing off limits. Any kind of discourse is welcome, but always respectful. And so keep that in mind. One question at a time. Remember, other people have questions, so, and the other, if you're handing them a document you'd like them to read, please don't quiz them on it at the same time, because we found that doesn't work very well. So you probably need to see them or make an appointment with them. So if you have a question, find your way in line, and we will begin as someone's up there. And Mike, if you know that microphone, hit that green button and go ahead and start.
Voila.
Move it up so that you're getting, there you go.
We all set now?
Can you hear him better? Okay.
All right. Welcome, Mr. Russell. It's a pleasure to have you back. Three things, if I could, today, since there's nobody behind me right now. The first is, I want to thank you and TJ for helping me dig out the TCAT data on Loudoun County schools. The good news is you all helped me find it. The bad news was what I found therein. The second is one of the measures that did not pass this year was education savings accounts. And I understand it came down to the wire, and I'd like to know why and if it's going to be coming back in 2025. And then third, during last year's kerfuffle over the village's proposal of real estate transfer fees, you commented publicly that you would only support it if the community as a whole supported it. And I was curious how you are defining or how you intend to identify that level of community support. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. And I do want to thank TJ, my assistant. She works hard for the 21st District. If you know her or have her email address, sort of sometimes give her a little message of encouragement. She works so hard for you all, and I can't express that enough. But the second thing, the ESAs, that was actually not the ESAs, it was a Tennessee Education Scholarship, Freedom Scholarships. It was different from the ESAs that they ran in 2019. In 2019, I voted against that. The district was, when I polled it, it seems like it's, and I'm going 5 years ago, and it seems like the district was like 60, 70% against the ESAs back in 2019. 2023, I voted for the ESAs to expand it to Hamilton County, and then this year it didn't make it to me for a vote. And like I said, it wasn't called the ESAs this year. It was the Tennessee Education Freedom Scholarships, which is a total separate amount of money. And at the very least, it would have cost the state $144 million, and at the most, it was almost $500 million. And there was 3 pieces of legislation that ended up starting that was totally different. The governor had his plan, the House had their plan, and then the Senate had their plan. So it was all over the place. Why it did not pass, probably because of all the phone calls and emails. When the last poll I had, 63% of the district was against it. I think that it probably will come back up in 2025. That's the governor's priority right now. It seems like the they call it vouchers, but it's not. It's the education scholarship, and the concern is it may become a voucher, I think, is the issue with it. But I was surprised that it polled so high against. But I would try to average, add them up every week. And it seems like it would average around 56 against, 56%, all the way up to, I think at one time, 68%. But the final numbers in my office was 63%. As far as House Bill 1116, the transaction bill, my poll is I get the people from the village. The way I look at things when I vote for legislation or run legislation, it's going to make common sense. The district's got to be for it. And on this instance, the only people in the districts that would affect is the village, so that's the community that I would poll. And then the third thing is it's got to be the right thing to do. So,
Well, do you mean that that bill will not affect anyone else in the state?
No, it won't affect anybody else in my district. So whenever I was polling it, I'd only poll my district. A lot of times I'll get emails from all other parts of the state, and I don't count them on my polls because you all vote for me, they don't. So you are the one telling me how to vote. But if I did that, I'd have a bunch of people from Memphis or Nashville trying to make me vote some crazy ways. But so 1116 is not going anywhere this year. As of November, it will be non-existent. Every single bill that's on the state website will be non-existent after November. That's just how they do it. Every 2 years, there's a new legislator that comes in. We'll go into the 114th General Assembly. They'll start back at 1 and start with numbers there. So there is talks about bringing it back, and at the end of probably February or March of this year, I started getting more people message me after they understood what that 1116 did, where it wouldn't affect the village people costing you all any money. It would just be people moving in. So the support started getting there. So it would depend on the support of the village and the majority of it, not just 100%. There's no way, if you get 3 or more people together, you can't decide on lunch, let alone pass on a piece of legislation. So, thank you.
Good afternoon, Kevin Kelly. I've been here since 2005. I'm sorry I don't know, haven't been keeping myself as update on this as I'd like to, but I was wondering, is there any proposed legislation, anything addressing girls and boys, in different sports, keeping transgendered out of women's sports? I think that's a disastrous policy. I think someone's going to get seriously hurt, and I was just wondering if the legislation has addressed that or is attempting to address it. Is it something that's being considered? Thank you.
I believe Representative Reagan's bill passed to address that. It was either the sports or the bathroom bill, and I just cannot remember. But if you could email the office, I'll find out for you. But I believe that did pass. And the reason I know I think it did pass is because we was in the back hallway one day and we was talking about the bathrooms right there. And I says, well, I can't go into the women's because I don't know if Representative Reagan's bill is passed yet or not. So, but he did have the bill, so I don't know if it passed or not. But we're working on it if it hadn't. But I believe it had. I know Representative Ritchie had a bill that prohibits an individual from intentionally recruiting, harboring, or transporting an unemancipated minor across the state lines for receiving medical treatment for a medical procedure dealing with sex change.
Okay, I'd like to also welcome our CEO, Chet Pillsbury, in the back of the room. Thank you for stepping in for us, Chet. Who else has questions? Please find your way to the microphone. I don't know why you're so shy, because, boy, you were grabbing me before we got started. So, anybody? Okay, good. Okay, yeah, go ahead and get in line, Susan. Now, this gentleman's already ahead of you. Do you realize that, Susan? All right. He's going to be a gentleman. Go ahead.
I wasn't planning on speaking, but I will. And first of all, I want to thank you for all the efforts to communicate with your constituents. I appreciate the newsletter that people can sign up for. That's a big improvement over the representative before you. One thing, well, a lot of things bother me about Tennessee, but I know that Tennessee is very low as far as having registered voters, legal registered voters, okay? And it's something when the governor was first elected, he had a listening tour, and I mentioned it to him, and he said that, yes, we should do something about it. But I'd like to know why, well, at every level of government, it seems like there's not any encouragement from elected officials to get people to register to vote. And I'd like your opinion, why do you think Tennessee is so low for having registered voters?
So, of course, the young people are our future. And the pretty cool thing about what's going on in our high schools right now is the high schools are registering these kids to vote. And the Secretary of State was actually down here a week or two ago presenting some awards to some of the high schools. And I shared them. I know Greenback was one of the 100% registrations, and I believe Sweetwater, Sequoia, but I shared them on my Facebook page. I'd have to go back and look exactly what schools it was, but we're working on getting those numbers of registered voters up.
Okay, well, I know churches do too,
Yeah.
but it seems to me that the elected officials should be talking about it more. Just a suggestion.
You're right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ken Holland. I wanted to ask, I saw an article concerning legislation that Tennessee and Louisiana and I think Missouri were looking at, that many other southern states were going to look at, and that is to claim our states' rights and not take dictation from the international organizations like the World Health Organization or the World Economic Forum or the UN. Do you know if something got passed on that? I read the article that was complimentary to Tennessee and Louisiana and I think Missouri taking the lead, but then it didn't explain what the outcome was.
Well, if it hadn't, I hope it does. I would have to go look it up. But we have, interesting thing, every year we have 1,500 pieces of legislation that's introduced around about there, and about 400 pieces of legislation will pass through the legislature each year. Now, when I tell that, people are like, wow, that's a lot of new laws. And that's not necessarily the case. We have to pass a bill into law to change wording that may be an error, to name a bridge or whatnot. We have to change the law to add that language in to make sure we name a road or a bridge after something. So once these bills come before me, I start reading them within 24 hours of voting, because that's the deadlines for late filed amendments. And once that happens, I'll just move on to the next one. So you'll have to email me that question. I can find out, but I don't remember that particular one.
I'll
just
do
because.
that. It's an attempt by states to prevent an international organization from pushing a pandemic button and saying, now you all have to comply with this particular ultimatum that the WHO organization has determined. Our doctors in Tennessee can't determine what we need to take. We've got to take whatever the WHO and the UN vote. So I'm interested to see, while it is a national bill, it's also local if it's going to catch fire and defend us against that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
So, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to make a comment on that. There have been efforts to do away with currency and go to Bitcoin and so forth. So I'd be real interested in that idea of protecting states' rights. And Tennessee has states' rights. We don't need to listen to an international organization telling us what to do.
Yeah, and
Eat
Representative.
farm-raised beef or man-made beef, lab-made beef. Thank you.
And there was a piece of legislation on each one of those this year. Representative Zachary had one, Representative Rush, and I can't remember about the man-made beef, but somebody had that. I would have to go look up the specific bills. And I guess probably next year, we probably need to give a list of bills that people might be interested in, so I can bring the outcome to this meeting, so I'll have a better answer for you. I think that probably maybe a week or two ahead of time, just to have people to email what they want to know about, so I can look them up and have it prepared.
Okay. Yes, next, please.
Thank you. My name is Doug Schutzel, 2-year resident of the village, and want to thank you for coming today and listening to our concerns. I'm not a political person, so I don't email you, so my preferences probably aren't reflected in your poll, so I decided to come up and let you know what they are here. You know, I think in the 2 years in the village, the people I've met, the great majority are from somewhere else, but they're here because of what Tennessee is. Tennessee is low taxes. Tennessee is personal freedom, and most of us have worked all of our lives to be able to move to a place like Tennessee, and we want to be left alone by government. And we want the taxes to stay low. And we hear things like, vouchers, let parents decide what to do with their own kids. I mean, we all have had kids at one point in our life. Most of them, we might have grandkids now, but, so I think most people here generally support that. The other thing we support is low taxes. And I heard you say that people don't consider a transfer fee coming out of their pocket. There's only so many dollars that a sale will support. And if there's another fee on it, it's coming out of the seller's pocket. And if you believe, Chet or anybody else, that the majority of people in here support taking money out of their pocket, you're listening to the wrong people. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask something a little closer to home here. Tennessee cities, some of them seem to have the ability to annex or take into the city surrounding land that is county land, and it changes the use potentially without the consent of the county given the authorization for that. Did any of that get touched on this year?
Leader Lamberth, William Lamberth, had a bill, it's House Bill 28, and it would make the annexation agreed upon by the county before the city was allowed to do it. However, the Senate didn't pass it. The House passed it all the way through finance, and then it just sat there because the Senate didn't pass it. Well, we tried.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Russell, do you know what the objections were, why it didn't pass?
I know that I've learned that we pass a lot of good stuff in the House that the Senate don't pass, so I can't tell you why, but it's interesting to see things down there in Nashville because there's the checks and balances. It's not easy to pass a law, which is good. I mean, if it's easy to pass a law, we'd have people telling us what to do all the time. And with checks and balances, when we as a public can email our legislators and tell them we don't like something, that's how things are decided. And even though it didn't pass, we can work on it next year, and I hope that passes because I think the county should have some sort of say-so.
County residents tend to agree with you on that.
Representative Russell,
Yes.
thank you for being here today. Mike Braddock, I'm an 8-year resident of Tellico in Tennessee. I want to revisit a question that was raised earlier. It was raised in the context of educational savings accounts, but my question and commentary is broader than that. It's school choice. Has the Republican politicians in Tennessee noticed and taken into account the legislation on school choice that has been passed in several other states? I believe Arkansas, Florida. There are at least a dozen different states that have now passed school choice / vouchers in one form or another. And what the commentary I will give you is, have the Republican representatives in Tennessee read the newspaper about what happened in Texas when those certain legislators drug their feet and they're no longer going to be serving their people? So it is a topic near and dear to my heart. I would urge you and your House colleagues and the Senate and the governor to get together and get that figured out in 2025. I believe school choice is a freedom issue and a rights issue, and that people should have the right to have their kids educated in the way and manner that they want. And I just think it's a growing trend that has an awful lot of support from a number of national organizations. Club for Growth, Wall Street Journal has several commentaries on this. I just urge you to really try and push that next year. But as I said, my question is, were the folks in Nashville that you were working with considering what has been done in other states? Thank you.
Thanks. I can only answer to what I was doing because I'm not on the education committee. I kept waiting to see what come before me to even vote on, because it seems like from one week to the next, an amendment would be added to the bill that would change the whole thing. So at the end of the day, like I said earlier, I really don't get into reading the ones I'm voting on until 24 hours prior to, because that's when the deadline is for those late filed amendments, because I found whenever in 2018 at January, whenever I got sworn in, I would read bills after bills after bills just to find out they didn't do anything that they started out with. And that would spend so much time doing that whenever I could be out here working on things for you in the district. So for me, I was watching some of the other states, but I don't know what Tennessee would end up with at the end of the day, what would pass. I think that most likely the Senate and the House would not have came together, and it would have been two separate bills. And what happens after that, they go into a conference committee. And you probably already know this, at a conference committee, there's about 9 or 10 people together that actually writes the final version of what we'll be voting on. And that's sort of frustrating. So next year in 2025, I encourage you to stand by your email and your, if you get my newsletter every Thursday, you'll get to read in it, and you'll know when they're probably coming up to vote to either the newsletter or the news. And make sure you email me and the other legislators, particularly on these committees as they're going through the committee, and if you support or oppose a piece of legislation, because there's some that you all will email me about, and I'll just forward it to the appropriate committee members because I don't have a vote that particular week. So it's important to stay up to date on where it's at in the process, because they can be killed at any committee.
Would you embellish that process a little bit? If someone is interested in, they're watching that bill, and they want to suggest an amendment for it, do they bring it to you, or do they have to go to who is ever sponsoring the bill?
They can send it to me. That's a very good question, because I get that a lot. You can send me the request, but most of the time the amendments comes to the sponsor, because we can do friendly amendments and then unfriendly amendments, but most of the time the unfriendly amendments gets voted down. But a lot of times we want to get you with a sponsor, and I'd be willing to either meet with you and the sponsor either in person, or we can do a Zoom call or just a phone call and see if we can get an amendment on a particular bill. But that's the best way.
I tried following the school voucher bill this year.
I did too.
And it got very involved, but do you know why it died? I mean, the funding part of it was, it became very confusing, and I lost track of it, frankly.
So I've heard either 2 votes or 3 votes against it, but I don't know who, as far as the reason why, to talk to the particular legislators. But like I said earlier, it's a pretty good thing when you can't easily pass laws. If we could just easily pass something, we would have people telling us what to do left and right, and that's just not how America is.
Macy, yes.
Lowell, thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
My concern, I want you to continue working on what is happening to our country. In February, when I went to visit our grandchildren in San Antonio, our son's in the Air Force, and the Uber driver gave me a ride to the airport, and he shared with me that he is getting phone calls from migrants at the bus station in San Antonio. They're men from Africa and China, and he is instructed to take them to the airport in San Antonio. My concern is the state that our country and the world is in right now, and we have a shortage of police officers, and the fentanyl that is destroying the lives between 18 and 45 years old. It reminds me of an incident several months ago that we had to call the police at the park here at TVA, and I'm very concerned what the fentanyl is going to do to our youth and our families, and continue working on that, and let the other legislators know how important that our families and our country is going to be destroyed along with this inflation. Thank you.
Thank you. I just had a meeting like 30 minutes ago talking about how deadly fentanyl is, and that's their most deadly drug right now that we got on the market. We've got to do something about that. We did have a piece of legislation by Representative Ritchie that would require civil liability from people transporting illegals through the state of Tennessee. We passed it in the House, but it failed in the Senate, and hopefully we can bring that back next year. I voted for it, and I think it's a good piece of legislation. We did pass that law I mentioned earlier that requires law enforcement officers to report illegals to the federal government, and also the piece of legislation that would enhance penalties for a illegal immigrant doing a crime in Tennessee. So we're fighting it. It's just taking a lot of time getting everything together.
Mike, did you have a question?
On the school vouchers issue, I have received the post-session summary from the Beacon Center, who were a primary proponent of the legislation, on the vouchers, or whatever terms we want to use. My reading of it is that it became a Christmas tree in legislative parlance, right? You have a good idea, it starts moving along, and everybody says, oh, I want this, oh, I want that. And all of a sudden it looked like a Charlie Brown's Christmas tree. The question I have, is it the practice in the Tennessee legislature, when you have a piece of legislation that has momentum but fails, to create interim study committees comprised of members who would then work on the topic, separate the wheat from the chaff, and then come back to the next session with a piece of legislation that had a greater chance of passing?
So we got two ways. There's a thing called summer study where if a bill they don't want to actually kill through the year, but they don't want to vote on it, or, they will send it to a summer study, and unless they appoint a group to study it, nothing will happen to it. But you bring a good point. There's a thing called an ad hoc committee that they could appoint to study a piece of legislation, and I had an ad hoc committee on juvenile justice a couple years ago, and we came back with a piece of legislation to address some juvenile crimes across Tennessee and the housing of juveniles, and they could do that with this bill. So yes, you're right, ad hoc committee.
But they had not. They did not do it?
They, as far as I know, to this date, they had not put an ad hoc committee together.
So I wanted, anyone else for questions? I have a couple things. Go ahead, Susan. Sure.
Well, you know that I was a former state employee, and I see everything through that vision of being a recovering bureaucrat. One thing I noticed pretty quickly when I moved here is a lack of transparency in government. And I'm talking about the county level, and I'm talking about the state level. It seems like there are efforts to make information less available to taxpayers. And I've observed that too, the few times I've been to Nashville. It used to be more open than it is now. It's more difficult to get in there and to be heard. And I know you are not like that. You have always listened to anything I've suggested. But I'd like your opinion of what's going on.
Well, I also am frustrated with it. I had a bill 2 years ago, or maybe 1 year ago, talking about illegal immigration, where people can report it, and the TBI, or Department of Safety, Homeland Security, could send it out to local law enforcement, and it would be published online at the accusation, and if somebody's housing illegal immigrants or not, and just publish it online. There wouldn't be any kind of crime, it would just be transparency. And that didn't even get a vote in the subcommittee because of that. So yeah, it frustrates me. I talked about the TCAPs earlier, trying to find that information. It took forever to get the information for the TCAPs, and That should not be the case. The website should be very accessible, easy to understand, and we've got to work on that. I think I mentioned earlier, good representation. It comes from good communication, and I think the state should work for the people and make any kind of government, federal government, local government too, they should be working for the people and provide all information in a transparent way. So yes, I agree.
Thank you.
Okay. I had a couple of things from your weekly wrap-up. There's lots of things I noticed, and some people may not have been aware some of this went on, but you have it too. I'm looking at the edition April 25th, but I saw that the lawmakers did approve a bill protecting property owners from squatters. And so that was approved. That was one of the questions, and I wanted to mention that. So you could look that up and search it on the website for the capital.tn.gov, or just Google Tennessee Assembly, and then you can reach the bills that way as well. So Chet, do you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just want to say too, that squatter law, it was from the district, and if it wasn't for you all communicating with me, we wouldn't have passed that law this year. So keep these emails up. That's important to me to be
Give
able to.
yourself a pat on the back.
So, yeah, you all have done a good job on that one. So.
How did they define squatter?
Chet?
Sorry, mate.
I have that page in
Well,
front of me.
the
Do you want
sheriff
it,
would
Lowell?
have to,
Well, what I mean by that is in many states that I've worked in, one of the problems is exactly that. Somebody stops paying their rent and the person can't move them out of the house. They have to go through such legal steps to get them that
yeah,
it's almost becomes prohibitive. That's
They
why I
have-
wondered how they define squatter.
yeah, so it's here. Squatting is the illegal practice of occupying a property without the owner's lawful permission. Although squatters have no rights in Tennessee, this happens to a property owner, must initiate a judicial eviction. So what they would have to do is go to the, it would be the Register of Deeds office to see who actually owns the property, and the sheriff can give them as little as 72 hours to get out.
Perfect, got it. That's what I was hoping it said, but I wanted to be sure. So, in talking with a lot of the local government, meaning the two counties, one of the things that came up that I found, I won't say disconcerting, but interesting, is that both counties have been putting away money or allotting money in the event that we have a financial failure, for lack of a better way of putting it. And I don't mean at the county level, I think they mean at the general federal level. Is that something that the legislature has any comment on, thoughts on, or?
So we do a rainy day fund, and I guess that's what you're talking about as a county level.
Well, I
too.
think what they were talking about is, as they described it anyway, I'll put it that way, is that if there was a financial situation where all the people in the community were completely unable to pay taxes and those kinds of things because of the financial, for lack of a better word, meltdown, that they would still have funds to be able to keep county services running without that income of taxes during that period of time.
You know, that's probably a better question for the mayor, but I would hope something like that's the case.
I just wondered if that was something at the state level was even discussed at all. I mean, the
Not that
counties,
I-
I think, are definitely doing that and
Yeah.
thinking that through. I just wondered if it was
Yeah,
at the state level.
we do a rainy day fund at the state level, so, and we contribute to it every year.
Gotcha. And that's what its purpose is and intent?
Yes.
Got it. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, and there was a parental notification, which is required for gender affirmation accommodations. So they are paying attention and listening to the concerns that are being sent up there, making voter registration process more secure. We are the #1 state for voter integrity. Yes, Mike? You like us.
So as we all know, a variety of services that we here in the village require are up in Farragut, Park West, medical, etc. What is the state's plan on fixing I-40 and I-75? Because I will tell you, I'll look at my app and it says 27 minutes, and an hour later, I'm finally getting there.
So last year, we passed the Transportation Modernization Act, which I believe it brings in $6.5 billion in the next 5 years, something like that. But they're going to add another lane on I-75 going up to the split. But there is a schedule, and I can get you that schedule. But it is in the works. I tell you what's frustrating for me is the potholes on I-75 from the Monroe County line up to Sugar Limb Road. It seems like every week I'm emailing TDOT to try to fix those potholes. And it's just reoccurring, and it's not just here, it's everywhere.
And so while we wait for I-40 and 75 to be addressed, the House did approve reform to increase care access. Are you familiar with that one? Would you like to? And I'm going to ask Mayor Bradshaw to come up, because I'm going to go back to answering a question. I'm pulling a chair up for you. As the elected officials know, if they show up, this may happen, so. But it shows the communication and cooperation that's necessary from the county level to the state level. These gentlemen work together constantly, all the time, and so you'll see that in the answer that's given in regard to counties wanting to annex land, or cities wanting to annex, and for development, industrial, whatever, and yet the counties have no say in it. So that's why I asked Mayor Bradshaw. He and I had discussed this earlier this year, and so between the two of them, we can get a little more discussion on that. Did you want to go into that explanation about more access to health care?
So the certificate of need bill, that was Representative Clark. I also don't serve on the Health Committee, but I would really like to do that because it really interests me. But basically, this bill would gradually phase out the certificate of need permit requirements needed to provide nearly a dozen various health care services in the state and during the next 5 years. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but if you don't get the newsletter during session, we send it out every Thursday, and it's got a lot of good stuff like this in it. And after a while, for me, it starts going together because I'm having to go through and read them every week. But that will hopefully help with providing some more hospitals. I wish that what they would do was with these old hospitals that they're closing down, to keep the emergency department running and maybe partner with the state and have mental health facilities in the upper rooms part, because we've got a mental health crisis going on not just here in Tennessee but across the nation, and I think we should be focused on the mental health part of the medical side of it and try to get some treatment for patients, and maybe even like people serving time in jail, try to get them some mental health treatment inside of a facility that we can lock up, maybe on like an upper floor of the hospital where they can serve their time and try to get treatment, and we won't have the people coming back to jail.
Can you tell us how is the selection process for what committees you end up on? Is it seniority, hierarchy? Can you request and fight someone out for it? If you wanted a healthcare committee, you'd have to trade off something?
Yeah, you can put in, I think, a wish list of 5 committees. And I put in health, but I never did get it. But I definitely want criminal justice and transportation because of my law enforcement background and I'm a pilot. So transportation is important. The civil justice, I think it's pretty interesting, but I wouldn't mind like a health subcommittee to go with that. And criminal justice is awesome, but it's just sort of the discretion of the speaker.
Okay. So Mayor Bradshaw, can you, from the county's point, can you explain a little bit about the annexation, counties not having a say in what's happening, and the attempts that were made this year? And then if Representative Russell wants in on that, you can share the microphone.
That's one of the things, and Representative Russell was great helping us with it. The Tennessee Municipal League, which represents the cities in the state of Tennessee, they are a very powerful group. And they carry a lot of weight, and they didn't like it at all. The 2 things we really were fighting was the annexation without county approval, as well as the pilot programs that an IDB an industrial development board can give away county taxpayer money if it's a city board. They can give away the county money, and there's not a daggone thing we can do about it. A pilot, a payment in lieu of tax, a new industry, sometimes existing industry, depends. But like I say, most new industries, they come in with a pilot, payment in lieu of tax. Sometimes it'll be as far as 50% tax cut. Now, we've never done one, but the state can do, or around the state, there's been zero taxes for so many years. Morgan Olson was, I guess, the first one I was really involved in. I think we gave them around a 50% tax abatement for a total of 10 years. And so, with these pilots, they could go through the Industrial Development Board of, for instance, City of Loudon or Lenore City, and those industrial development boards have full authority under state law to give away county taxpayer money. And we've never really turned down a pilot, but for me, for a group of unelected folks to be able to give away yours and my money, to me, that's just not right. There was an incident here in the county where I feel like the county really got the short end of it. And I feel like if they're going to give our money away, the county commission should have a say-so in it, or should have a vote on it. I've never heard of that. And again, then you got when it comes to development, there's a lot of big pushback in Nashville for it as well, for these.
Help me here to understand if I'm thinking of it correctly. So the EDA, which is our economic development agency in the county,
Yes.
can work with the city, Lenore City, for development, and then they can promise a pilot, which stands for what, PI?
Payment in lieu of tax.
Okay, thank you. I don't know why I can't remember that, but pilot, I think of flying. So they can agree on a project, and then you've got the county commissioners and you have no say-so.
None whatsoever.
That needs to be changed.
Absolutely.
So-
And the way it works is that the payment in lieu of tax, the company, say Acme Mousetraps comes in. Well, they're going to build this, they want to pay fewer taxes. They would actually sign the land and building over to this IDB, which is in tax exempt, because it's a government agency, but would agree to pay $25,000 a year in taxes, is the way that it operates. And yes, right now, like I said, there's not a thing the county can do about it.
And so where was the opposition on this? Where did it come from?
I think you've got a lot of economic development authorities are a little bit scared of that maybe, because there's, like I said, we've always been very good, and pilot's not a popular word, I know it's not, but it's a way of business. And so I think across the state, you probably have a lot of commissions and counties that may not be as open to this as maybe Loudoun County is. So I think there was a lot of fear involved in that there may be miss out on an opportunity.
What I saw in Florida when I was on the city council, we approved some projects. They were the same thing, payment in lieu of taxes. They were under a different title, but they promised so many jobs, so much economic benefit to the area, and somehow they never reached that number of jobs that they promised to bring and so forth. And it was always a problem, always.
Well,
So
one of my biggest things in either supporting or not, it was wages. One of the ones I was involved with, we're going to average $24, $25 an hour. Pre-2020, that was outstanding. You could raise a family on that. You could, well, they included the president of the company and all this in on it. My bottom line, which of course I don't get asked much anymore because I very much intend for the county to have a say-so, but I want to know what the man and the woman up front are making, that are on that front line. Are they able to support a family with it? Is it a livable wage? Because if it's not, they don't deserve a pilot. It's they ought to be able, like I said, it ended up being, this company said, $24, $25 an hour, ended up being more along the lines of 14 or 15. Loudoun County has all the 14, $15 an hour jobs it needs. Our next pilot, our next big land needs to be something with a much better wage than what we've got. We can't fill the jobs we've got now.
And so my question would be, do you two gentlemen have your battle plan for next year to get this passed?
We're going to fight it again. Well, I tell you, at the fall conference, we started out, Representative Russell introduced it as it was going to include Loudoun and Monroe County, populations under 60,000 at the last census. Well, we were at the Association of County Mayors meeting, and one of my friends in Middle Tennessee goes, wait a minute, can we take that to 70? I have no problem, talk to your legislator. Can we get it to 80? before it was over, every county mayor in that room, which was probably 55 or 60 of us, why we got numbers on it? We want this. And everybody supported it. I don't know how active they were in supporting it, but it's still, Representative Russ tell you, it hits a wall, and sometimes it's hard. Some of these are hard, because you've got just as much opposition as you do have people that are pushing for it sometimes.
Representative Russell?
So I've got two answers for you. I wasn't just sitting here texting on my phone. We did pass a law to prohibit males from playing in female sports, so that did pass. I confirmed that. And we passed Resolution 820, urged Tennessee's United States representatives and senators to work towards ending taxpayer funding of the World Health Organization. That passed, and it will push President Biden and his foreign policy officials to reject policies that would further empower the WHO. So that did happen.
Can you tell us how we'd find that bill? What was the House bill or
So
bill?
just like Susan said earlier, go to the same website and House Joint Resolution 820.
820, okay. I will look that up, so if
And that
if
was
anyone
actually in my
wants-
last newsletter too, so
House Bill Joint Resolution, okay.
You
And
we can forward it to you.
Mike, come on, Mike, we've got 3 minutes left, you'll get in there.
So, on a related matter, I'd like to share an anecdote with you. So in my prior life, back in 1992, one of our general managers approached me and said, I need you to call the state of Arkansas and give back our building. And the reason was, we had promised to produce so many jobs, and the challenge was, nobody in that particular county who applied for a job could pass any of the entrance exams to get in. So there was virtually nobody to hire. The state said, don't worry about it, keep the building. So I went back to our CEO and I said, look what I did today. And he said, what the hell did you do? From that moment, for the next 30 years, every manager in a Fortune 150 corporation, manufacturing, was prohibited from either requesting or accepting state incentives other than training funds. When you have, to your opening point, Representative, Tennessee is a well-run state. Tennessee is a state that profitable companies want to come to. The companies that want those incentives are the ones that are having financial issues. And I don't know that we want them here, because it's just going to create the kinds of problems that you've said. And I've been in situations where I've sat down with economic development people, because I was assigned to all of our siting projects. And some cases, and I know one in North Carolina, they literally filled out the forms and signed our manager's name to it for a $50,000 state incentive. And I had to go to Raleigh and say, we don't want this. We didn't sign up for it. We don't want it. But you got some training funds to help us employ people, we'll take that. So that's an anecdote, and I will tell you also that there are studies after studies after studies that show, to Susan's point, these incentives really don't generate the economic benefits that the recipients promise. So I would commend both of you to keep that in mind. You've got your own issues with someone else spending your money, but I would commend both of you to keep in mind, if we are such a well-run state, why do we have to give away so much money? And one other example, while I was still employed, Beretta moved to Gallatin, and the state just showered Beretta with money and benefits, etc. What it ended up doing is giving Beretta the ability to poach employees from all the other manufacturers in Gallatin. And they had nowhere to turn to try to recoup that loss. It's a case where states are picking winners and losers. So I would commend both of you to keep those anecdotes in mind when you think about economic development.
You know, I think it was a year ago you had mentioned this, and I went and researched it, and I agree. There's not a really good way the state is, and I guess the counties too, is going back and recouping some of that stuff that they give as incentives if they don't fulfill their promises. And what surprised me while I was researching that after you'd mentioned it before is the state is required to be notified if a company lays off a certain amount of people. I think it's 50 or more people. And to find out, there's not really nothing that they're doing to the businesses if that's not happening. So I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. I didn't know that until last year. So thank you.
And we've got most of our contracts and pilots at the behest of county commissioner and my office, they have drawback clauses now, clawback clauses where in the event it doesn't happen, we're actually dealing with that with Morgan Olson as we speak, just in talks, and, you know, this was promised, this didn't happen with their massive layoff they just had.
And how often have you employed that ordinance?
Morgan Olson's probably the first one. But, you know, my opinion on, like I said, I think pilots are necessary, and we're going to disagree on that. But I think it also depends on where your unemployment's at. Right now, we're at 4% roughly. That's zero.
Right.
You know, anybody wants a job in Loudoun County, if they say, well, I can't find work, they're lying, or they've not left the living room, and forever. So, you know, I think we should and need to be very responsible with those over this next stretch, because like I said, our unemployment's nothing right now. Our guys and one of our Viscase, I use Viscase. My dad worked at Viscase 33 years, raised all of us on it. Great place to work, great wage. They can't get people. Never in 100, you'd asked me 30 years ago, do you ever think there'll be a day when Viscase has a big sign up that says now hiring? Absolutely not. You had to know somebody. Like I said, 30 some odd years ago, I put an application in, and my dad had worked there 33 years. I couldn't even get an interview. Thank you for your interest. Sorry. And now they can't get people. I mean, I don't know if the government's paying that well to sit at home is the only thing I can imagine.
Well, I think a part of it, Mayor, is going back to an earlier discussion point on education savings accounts and the role that your office played in helping me find the TCAT data. You look at the TCAT data for Loudoun County, and it helps you, I think, understand why you're not getting $24, $25 an hour jobs. You know, unless we get 60% of the children crossing that graduation stage that have not met standards in math, language arts, or science. All they're qualifying for is the $14 jobs because they're basically functionally illiterate. And that doesn't help our county grow.
I'm going to delve into those numbers more.
I'll be happy to send you to them.
Yeah, please do.
Because I will tell you, after TJ helped me the first time, that address within the State Department of Education disappeared.
Really?
So, Mayor, I have one other question, and I don't know if it dovetails into the legislature or not, but the UGB, and that's the urban growth boundary, which a lot of people might not know what it is, but with the annexations, the failed annexations that have caused lawsuits, is the UGB up for consideration to redraw the lines? And if they are, does the legislature have to approve it? The other backup question to that is, if you start redrawing the UGB lines, does that make us a target for annexation?
Well, all of that comes through the state. The restructuring of the UGB lines all comes through the state. It's a slippery slope. Who wouldn't love to have their hands on Telco Village? I mean, that's the bottom line.
We got a water project for you.
But all that would come through the state. It would. Yeah.
Okay. Lowell, you want to say anything on that?
I was agreeing with Buddy, and you,
Okay.
of course, I'm going to do whatever y'all want me to do, but yeah,
Okay.
he's totally right.
Well, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. You get to John, and actually, this is the first time we've run over by just a few minutes. Usually I finish right on time. I want to thank you, Buddy, for being, this has happened before. Thank you for sharing
No worries.
your table, Representative Russell. And let's give these two gentlemen a hand because the amount of time and effort.
I'm taking that one.
Yes. Yes, you can have it, you can have. Please don't leave because we have information on the election for the August primary, who's voting, where you vote, when you vote. So you may get some information that will be helpful to you, so please don't. And you want for his newsletter? Write down your name and remind me, and I will send it to you, okay? And so we are going to go, Susan Lowell, to the back of the room, please, to the back of the room, because we're going to go ahead and get started. So, elections in Tennessee. Okay, can we have the side conversations? Can we have order, please? Back of the room, okay, because we're starting on the next session. So this is elections in Tennessee. So what does that mean? Well, for one thing, welcome to Tennessee. We do things different here, and we really do. The election laws are different. We have primaries here, and so people have said to me, we vote 3 times in an election year. Yes, you do. You vote 3 times in a presidential cycle. You vote 3 times in a county cycle. Right now, we're in the presidential cycle. And so I just wanted to make you aware who is on the ballot in August, where the voting places are. Is everyone aware of where their district is? Because the voting precinct for District 1 has changed. And so that has now become the Lutheran church that is opposite the POA offices. So you have quite a few now that the filing dates are over. Tellico Village is Monroe and Loudoun County. So in Monroe County, for the people of Pahiti, there are 4 Senate people running for election. The seat is empty. And as anyone knows who follows politics, it's easier to get elected to an empty seat. So you have 4, let me check this before I get myself wrong. You have 4 people running in Tennessee, 3 Republicans and 1 Democrat for an empty Senate seat. And that is the seat that covers Monroe. So your primary election, August 1st, is your primary for the U.S. Senate and U.S. House. It is the general for the primary that was held March as part of Super Tuesday. So for the people who ran and were in the primary in March, that was their primary. In order to close out their election, they have to be on the August ballot and take that election as well. That closes out their ballot for them. So that finishes the county people. For the state and federal candidates, August 1st starts it for them. So who is up August 1st? Senator Marsha Blackburn. She has a Republican opponent, so there will be a primary. She also has 4 in opposition, 4 Democrats opposing her, and 3 independents. So it's a lot of opposition. It will be interesting to watch Senator Blackburn's race. The U.S. House race, you know this as Representative Tim Burchett, the incumbent. He has a Democrat opponent. And so their names will be on the August ballot. And if you are so inclined and want to, keep in mind, donations are accepted by these candidates, workers, and get out and vote and encourage other people to vote. Back down in Monroe County for Kahidi, Representative Chuck Fleshman, an incumbent and a longstanding incumbent, he has 1 Democrat opposition and 2 independents. Again, that's going to be a very heavily contested race. Your Senate candidates, District 2, your Republicans are Tom Hatcher, John Puglias, Brian Ritchie, and the Democrat is Patty Young. June 13th in Kahidi from 4 to 6, we will have those Senate candidates there, as well as Representative Russell back again for the Kahidi audience. And also, you will have Representative Russell is your incumbent. He is going for his 3rd term. You will be able to see the Democrat opponent, Ken Moore, who is running for that seat. And so you were able to have this time with him this way. You'll see him with Ken Moore down in Kahidi. So early voting locations, where do you vote? Early voting, you can vote any place in the county that's open. There's 2 places, the county offices or Roane State College. On early voting in the village, there's only 3 days, July 17, 18, and 19, and that's from 10 to 6. All of this will be in the newsletter, in the Telegram. So don't feel like you have to take quick notes or anything. It's all going to make it into the Telegram. If you have registered to vote by mail, you must vote for the first time in person. You can't absentee ballot. They have got to have you show up in person if you have registered by mail. So, District 1. So who's in District 1? If you're coming from Lenore City down the Parkway, anything on the left-hand side is District 7. If you are on the right-hand side, all the way down to Clear Creek, that is District 1. After Clear Creek, that is District 7. So, for voting purposes, it doesn't change our state federal at all. It does on the county level. We have 2 commissioners out of District 1 and 1 commissioner out of District 7. So if you want more information on this, sos.tn.gov, and that is the Secretary of State's website, a mountain of information there. GoVoteTennessee.gov, LoudounCountyVotes.com. That will get you right into the Loudoun County offices, and then Monroe County electionscommission.com, and that will give you all the information for anyone there. So I just wanted to briefly go over this. People are very confused by our primary, March, August, November. In 2 years, it's going to be May, August, November. We are March on presidential years because we're part of Super Tuesday. So, anyone have any questions on primaries, where you go to vote, what the process is? Can I do this? Can I do that? If you're looking for information, let me just hold this up for you. This is the amount of that's the first day to pick up petitions, the qualifying deadline, the voter registration deadline, the early voting dates, the absentee ballot deadlines. So if you have a question, it is there and available to you. And this is off the Secretary of State's website. So Susan Harrison, our elections administrator, has her own calendar as well, specifying dates, hours of voting locations. And so that's all available to you. If you still find you've got a question, call someone on the Government Affairs Committee. We're on the website. Come to one of our meetings. We're open to the public. Second Tuesday of the month, 9 to 10, all of our meetings are open. So come, ask us questions, see what we do, see how we operate. If you have suggestions or anything, let us know. Anyone have anything? Any questions? Yay. If not, we're adjourned, and we're early now. Thank you.